All right, hello. Let's do a sound check. And welcome, everyone. Welcome in. Happy Monday. Yeah, today is Monday, March 16th. That's right, Monday, March 16th, 2026. Welcome in, everyone. I'm so glad to see you. We'll be getting into the show tonight. Tonight's show is called Keeping of Secrets: How a Community Colluded to Bury the Truth of a Tragedy. And a tragedy it is. And tonight we're going to be taking a look at some evidences of the burying of this tragedy in Delphi, Indiana, something we've covered often, the Delphi murders. And for those of you who are new here, I want to welcome you in and ask you to hit the like and subscribe, and also hit the bell to all notifications so that you learn when we are live. Uh, as I've looked into the background of my channel, there's not enough people who have hit the all. So a lot of people don't get the notices when we go live and when I make posts. So if you want all that, go ahead and make sure you hit that bell to all under the notification button, and you'll be up to date. So welcome in. And today is a slow Monday. It was a busy Monday for me, but I'm glad to come on tonight and talk with you for a minute. Um, there's a lot going on. And so, as I mentioned, welcome to everyone. Everyone in the chat, I want to say hi to you and welcome. And those of you who are new or on the replay, welcome in. And please leave comments down below on the replays after this live is done. I would appreciate your input. We always look for your input, unless you're coming to stalk and harass like a group of locals do. But we're just going to ignore them and speak together. Anyhow, thanks so much for being here. And as we get started, I want to take a moment here and just pay respects to Mr. David Hennessy. Um, I'm sure everybody has learned by now that Mr. Hennessy has passed away. And Mr. Hennessy was a very thorough attorney. And if you've studied any of the transcripts and any of the filings that he was responsible for and the hearings he was associated with, you will see how great of an attorney he was in terms of really standing his ground and holding people accountable for their misdeeds. And so I meant to do this in my last show, and because of the all that we were dealing with in the last show, I unfortunately forgot to mention Mr. Hennessy. But I did want to not forget today and to start the show by honoring Mr. Hennessy, paying respects to him, um, and condolences to his wife and family. Mr. Hennessy did a great job in his role in the Delphi case, and we will continuously circle back to Mr. Hennessy because I will be pulling up some of the hearings he was involved with and his filings, and reminding us of how great an advocate he was, and how strong of an argument he made on all the issues that he addressed. So God bless Mr. Hennessy, and condolences to the community and also to his family members and his wife. My thoughts are with you all. And fortunately, Mr. Hennessy is now in a better place. And so God bless him and may he rest in peace. Tonight, we will be getting into sort of what has become the topic of the hour, so to speak. And what that topic is the truth about Delphi. And this has been a long battle, and it's an ongoing battle. And I think it may be starting to occur to you all that the real argument here is that there are several of us out here saying that the evidence indicates that Mr. Ron Logan, Mr. Keegan Kline, and according to Mr. Kline, his father, Tony Kline, in conjunction with some of the Asatru followers, Vinlanders, or quote unquote Odiners, together all perpetrated this crime in Delphi, meaning that there were two separate murders in Delphi, which have been I guess confounded or or kind of mixed together as one. Okay, if you were to believe the insane state's narrative, you know, the exact narrative that Gray Hughes pushed all these years, that state's narrative that a single person, i.e., Bridge Guy, took Abby and Libby, walked them off the bridge across the creek, killed them, and left them there where he killed them, and then carried out uh, on about his day. If you were to believe that insane gaslighting narrative, um, you might see why this concept that we are claiming is the more true version of events indicates that in Delphi there were actually two murders that were separate events, meaning there were two victims, each killed at a different time, each killed in a different way, and each killed by different individuals. At least that's my theory based upon the evidence that has surfaced and made itself abundantly clear to me. And I do believe that in this instance, what we are faced with is a absolutely horrible crime in which one girl is killed or murdered, and that one girl being killed, leaving one girl alive. The next girl is then given up to a group of individuals who choose to ritualistically sacrifice that young girl and then stage both of these young girls to look like a single crime. And the way that I've summarized that for our viewers is that it's my opinion that there are two sides to this story. The first murder being carried out by the individuals who coincidentally Reese Davis stepped forward to whistleblow on. And remember, he did this immediately. Okay, immediately. Mr. Reese Davis came forward. He he repeatedly contacted law enforcement, the FBI, and the prosecutor in Delphi to try to have them hear his valid information. And that information would indicate that Ron Logan, Keegan Kline, and possibly Tony Kline together perpetrated a crime against Libby German, the first killing. And based upon additional evidence that we have gathered from many, many sources, some of which you will see tonight, would indicate that then the individuals mentioned in the Franks memorandum were called in to quote unquote take care of the second girl, and that's Abby Williams. Remember, there is absolutely solid information that there were ritualistic elements to this crime. And I would add that the name Abby Williams is another ritualistic element that is tied to these victims. Keep in mind that it coincidentally occurred on a ritualistic holiday, according to these practitioners, in a ritualistic location, done in a ritualistic manner, and colored with ritualistic symbolism. Now, when you've had so much truth surface about these crimes, it's kind of appalling that there would be people out there denying such truth. And as you know, as I've sat here for a few years and pleaded with the community to please step forward and say what they know about this crime, I've continuously said, what kind of community covers up the murders of its own children? And I stand by that. I've also said, what kind of crime would engender this sort of cover up? Because I don't think that's a small consideration. A small crime would engender a small time cover up. A crime that has implications to incriminate extremely important people would generate a massive cover up. And what we've seen here in Delphi, in all appearances, is that an entire community has come together to cover this up, all the way from the immediate family members, all the way on up to the head of the state police. That's a massive cover up. As a matter of fact, not only is it that contingent, but you have an entire contingent online who are operating to ensure that this crime remains covered up. And it's my assumption that the only reason you would have this large of an effort directed at covering up the true nature of this crime is because this crime leads back to one thing and one thing only, and that's the Dropbox. That's right, the Dropbox. Uh, it's a taboo. It's verboten. It's the word that you are not allowed to say. Elsewise, death threats, smear campaign, bullying, targeting, harassment, discrediting, doxing, and defamation. Lawfare, weaponization of police, weaponization of the copyrights strike system on YouTube, targeting of your family members, targeting of your friends, targeting of your children. If it walks like a duck, it's a duck. As I often say with humor, hello. So the interesting thing with this entire effort is the level of narcissistic tactics that are used. in the attempts to silence one. And it's absolutely astounding because no matter which topic you touch upon in this case, you are guaranteed to be uh, encountered with a dismissive, Darvo based, narcissistic, gaslighting, logical fallacy riddled debate, which is not a true debate, as you all know. And that's just astounding because there's never a good faith argument, is the other way of saying it. Because, hey, people like myself, we'd be glad to debate any aspect of this case and of this evidence and of these theories if those were indeed good faith debates. But good faith debates are never brought. Instead, it's those things I mentioned: dismissive, pedantic, patronizing, victim blaming, uh, demeaning, fallacious, bad faith arguments. And one of the first things I come to is, you know what's odd here? What's odd here in this case of Richard Allen, the accused here in this Delphi case, is that every single person who's touched the discovery, who's seen the discovery, who's investigated this case from the inside out, every single one of them will say Rick is factually innocent. He is not only not guilty, but he is 100% innocent. And that's kind of confounding because I think back and I think, how often do you see investigators, defense attorneys, and those who would have knowledge, how often do you see them coming out against an accused murderer and making such bold claims that not only is he not truly guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, but he is in fact factually innocent 100%? And I think that it's something to think about. I mean, I really don't see it happening very often. But in this case, every attorney who's touched this case says he's 100% factually innocent. And the investigators say he's 100% factually innocent. And those who've seen the discovery say he's 100% factually innocent. Yet, the prosecutor, law enforcement, and the judge ensured that they secured a conviction. And they did that by limiting the truth that came into this trial, by giving the jury only one option, by pressuring the jury to vote guilty, and then by coercing or contaminating the jury with attempts to tie Richard Allen to Keegan Kline. And I ask the question, that's odd. That's really odd. How did the jurors know that Keegan Kline even existed? And how would they know that Keegan Kline is somehow involved in this Delphi case? Because if the way that the jury was gotten to was convincing them that Richard and Keegan Kline were working together, then the second question is, well, damn, how did they know about Keegan Kline? Wasn't Keegan Kline in that questionnaire that they had to fill out? So as I was thinking about this in preparation for tonight's show, for this show, I thought, let me play something in. Let's take a look at something together before we get into the show so that we all can get on the same page. And maybe it's been a while since some of you have seen this, and some of you may have never seen this. And I think it's important that you see this, because this is another instance of someone who's touched this case feeling and declaring that Rick Allen is 100% innocent. So let's take a look at this, and then we'll get into the case, or to the show tonight. But I want us to go through this very slow. Now, I may stop it from time to time. So this is what we're going to do.
This morning, we're shining a spotlight on the latest developments in the DELPHI murder case, focusing on the defense attorneys, as prosecutors want to get Richard Allen's defense attorneys held in contempt. These prosecutors say that Allen's newly reappointed attorneys, Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin, have violated the court's gag order and were grossly negligent for being at fault for crime scene photos being leaked to the public, which the state says has caused irreparable harm to the victims' families. In their motion, prosecutors allege the press release and the 2 occasions of leaked information show a trend by defense counsel of not being completely honest with the court, violating the court's gag order set in place to protect the integrity of the case, and failing to comply with the protective order put in place to protect the discovery in this case. Well, now, we're hearing from one of Richard Allen's former attorneys in a Court TV exclusive interview. Public defender William Labredo stepped down as counsel earlier this month after the state Supreme Court decision, and he's therefore no longer bound by the gag order. Court TV documentary producer Barbara McDonald was the only person that he spoke to, and she is on the couch with me this morning. A wonderful journalist you are, and really, I like to say you are our in-house expert on the DELPHI cases. This is something you have researched, written about, done interviews on for many, many years. Yeah. So this is really quite a feather in your cap that he's talking exclusively to you, Barbara. Tell us, what was the most stunning thing to you that he shared, please?
I think how emphatic he is in his belief that Richard Allen is innocent, not just not guilty, but that he's innocent of these charges and not involved at all, according to Bill Labredo. That was a bit surprising to me.
Okay, what did she just say? She said that Labredo says Rick Allen is 100% innocent and not involved at all in this crime. And that was a bit surprising to her.
You know, and I pushed back on that a bit. Like, you know, you're a defense attorney, that's your job, right? To say that. And he said he has handled murder cases.
Okay, and that's what I mean about the gaslighting narrative, okay? The gaslighting ass narrative that these naysayers will throw at you is all defense attorneys are supposed to say that. No, they're not. They're not. But that's, okay, when you touch on this point, that all the attorneys say he's 100% factually innocent, the naysayers, the troll farm, the mean girls, they'll say, oh, but all defense attorneys will say that. No. And let's listen a little more. I'm sorry for being annoying here. Let's go.
To say that, and he said he has handled murder cases. He's handled probably 100 murder cases in his career, and he says he doesn't say that very often, and he's never felt as strongly about a client's innocence as he does in this case.
Okay, he's handled about 100 murder cases, Labredo, and he doesn't hardly say that at all. Okay? And then look at this one. Look at this one. What did she just say? Let's back it up a bit.
Never felt as strongly about a client's innocence as he does in this case.
And he's never felt as strongly about a client's innocence as he does in this case. In other words, Labredo says he's never felt as strongly about a client's innocence as he does in the Richard Allen case. This is after representing over 100 murder suspects in trials. He says Rick Allen is 100% innocent, and he's never felt as strongly about anyone's innocence as he does about Richard Allen.
Wow, Barbara, that says something. It really does. And the fact that
so
you
that's-
pushed him too, and you were like, well, you're not just saying your client's not guilty, you actually really believe that he's not guilty. And he even used the word innocent with you, not
innocent.
going a step beyond.
Yes, 100% innocent is what he said.
Wow.
We also talked about a lot of other things connected to the case, including the theory of Odinism, that was floated by the original defense team. They've now been reinstated, but they said in some of their filings that they believe that white supremacist members of this Odinistic cult are responsible for the murders, and I asked him about that, and here's a little bit of what he had to say.
Okay, and remember this woman here, Barbara McDonald, she's 100% a Ron Logan was involved in these murders person. Okay, this woman, Barbara McDonald, is a Ron Logan was involved in killing these girls person. And she knew Ron Logan very well, trust me. Okay, Barbara knew Ron Logan. So keep in mind, this woman who believes Ron Logan was involved in these murders is also saying that she's compelled by Libredo's feeling about this. Now, I want you to now listen to Libredo himself and pay very close attention to his body language. And I might stop it. I'm going to try not to. But here we go.
I thought it was hocus pocus. I honestly didn't. I'd never heard of it. And the more I got into it, that's a real thing.
I thought it was hocus pocus. I thought it was hocus pocus. I didn't believe in it. But the more I got into it, I saw it was a real thing.
It is a real thing, and it's scary.
In what way?
Well, I believe they sacrificed a girl and killed another one.
I believe they sacrificed a girl, one murder, and killed another one, second murder. I believe they sacrificed a girl and killed another one. Let me back it up a little bit.
They sacrificed a girl and killed another one. Some of the people that live in Delphi were very brazen about their Odinistic beliefs on their Facebook pages and other social media accounts, including the sergeant who was in charge of keeping Mr. Allen safe in Westville.
You described one of those officers that's mentioned in one of Rosie and Baldwin's filings, Sergeant Jones, who was wearing patches that said, "In Odin we trust," on his Department of Corrections uniform.
Yep.
The judge ordered the warden to make them stop. And then what did you notice?
That Mr. Jones had it tattooed under his right eye. From the best we can tell, it looks a lot like Odin's spear. And he had several tattoos on his forearms, including the interlocking triangles that are on his Facebook post. I got to give credit to Mr. Rosie and Mr. Baldwin that, they picked up on that. We saw him, and, confinement officers at the Allen County Jail aren't even allowed to have facial hair, let alone facial tattoos. I was a little miffed that the warden allowed that, or, he even knew what it was.
That was one of the things that surprised me, too, is that it was the same guard, according to Bill Libredo, that had the patch, was told to stop wearing it, and then comes to work with the tattoo under his eye.
Oh, Barbara, as I'm watching that, and my jaw dropped. Something else that's interesting that you asked him about, when he's telling you he believes in that legal theory, he wasn't the first attorney to put it forward. As you know, it was the first set of defense attorneys who are now back currently Richard Allen's defense attorneys. And as we know, attorneys don't always agree on a legal theory in a case. To me, that really says something that there may be some substantive value in it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and he said that, you know, their defense strategy would have been probably a little bit different than Rosie and Baldwin, but not too different. They were also preparing a Frank's memo for a Frank's hearing, alleging that there were, you know, problems with the information that was used to obtain the search warrant for.
Now, that's an important thing that I missed before, okay? She said that Libredo and Scrimmin were preparing their own Franks, alleging that there were problems with the search warrant, okay? Which, if you recall correctly, is a huge piece. It's one of the main three components of the appellant's brief or the appeal. So in this appeal, one of the major components is that search warrant. And it's very interesting here that I'm refreshed upon listening to this, that that it was going to be one of their main issues they were going to bring out in their own Franks before the Supreme Court told Judge Gull to kick rocks. Because remember, this judge and this prosecutor, so the judge forced or bullied these defense attorneys to step away from the case. She tried to take Rick Allen's attorneys away from him because they had stumbled into this out of discovery. And furthermore, when the Supreme Court reinstated them, McClellan decided he was going to give it a second try to find them in contempt and have them arrested. And that also failed because it came out in that March hearing that there were YouTubers working with the prosecution in leaking documents and other shit. And we'll find out more about that at another time, but we've covered that exhaustively before. But let's continue.
Richard Allen's home. So it sounds like they were following a similar path, if not, you know, not identical, but a similar path for sure.
Close, right? With the Odinism theory being at the heart that someone else carried this out and that this brutal killing of those beautiful children was done by someone practicing Odinism.
Exactly, and that's what, you know, I think when that first Odin memo dropped, we were all like, Odinism, what is that, right? And I think for a lot of people, it was that there's no way that that could be true, and this is somebody who looked into it, who at first said, no, I don't buy that either. But then after getting into the case, he had it for 79 days as lead counsel, and he says there's something there.
Wow.
79 days as lead counsel. 79 days, and he changed his mind. You see, like any objective person would do.
Barbara, I know that obviously as an attorney, any communications he had with Richard Allen, as you know, are privileged, but he can certainly describe, you know, how he was doing in jail or what he saw. The appearance, I know, has been so stunning to so many people, the dramatic weight loss. Tell us what he shared with you about that. If
he said that he is improving some mentally and physically, but that it is still very difficult for him. He dropped from 206 pounds at his arrest to about 122 pounds at his lowest. He says he's still probably in the 130 to 140 range, so definitely much lower than what he had been. He described him as calm, very soft-spoken, very engaged in his defense, and very kind and appreciative to the people working on his defense.
Wow. You know, it sounds like even though there was so much disruption and we saw such a bitter legal battle playing out all the way up to the state Supreme Court, you were there, you know, watching things. Even though that all happened, it seems that there was so much civility among these lawyers who were appointed for a brief time and then have left. It seems like there's no animosity, is there, between them and the original attorneys?
Yeah, he had high praise. He said if there's anything he can do to benefit them and their case, he's happy to take part in that. You know, he feels that Richard Allen is in very capable hands, even though he would have liked to have stayed on the case. He said it's very rare that you get a high-profile case where you really believe your client is innocent, and that's where he was. But he says, you know, he absolutely is willing to do whatever he can. I know that, you know, legality-wise, it's a little dicey now at this point, but he wants to see Richard Allen get a fair trial. And he also believes that Judge Fran Gull is the secret to that fair trial. He thinks she's the right judge for this case.
And now she's been appointed the is it the chief judge in her
Yes.
division, Barbara? Wow, so, which is a huge nod from her colleagues. I mean, that must say so much about her.
He said she's one of the most qualified judges he's ever worked with. He's been arguing before her for 2 decades or more, and says she's absolutely the judge who's going to ensure that Richard Allen gets a fair trial, which is what he says he wants.
Yes, and he certainly has that right, as you know. Barbara McDonald, I can't wait to see all of your interview. Thank you for the preview.
Closing arguments.
Yes.
Yep. And then there's also going to be a story going up on courttv.com with some more
Beautiful.
information from my talks with him.
Beautiful. You've been doing a great job with the writings that you put up on our website and all the information you are sharing. Barbara, thank you so much.
Julie.
And again, a big reminder, you can watch all of Barbara's exclusive interview with Richard Allen's former court-appointed attorney, William Libredo, tonight, 8 p.m. on Closing Arguments with our friend Vinnie Politan.
Well, all due respect to Libredo, I have to differ with him there. I bet he's changed his mind since, once he's seen all the shit she pulled. And if Richard Allen does win his appeal, it will be single-handedly her fault because of all the oversteps and all that she allowed. So, yeah, Libredo, I differ with him on that one, but that goes without saying. But to touch upon that note that she was honored or promoted, keep in mind, think of all the promotions. Jerry Hillman, honored, right? Judge Gull, honored, right? David Vito, honored. Doug Carter, retired. All of the promotions, the honorifics that were given to these people, Holman commended, Vito commended, all of Unified Command. I mean, this has been absolutely appalling, but this is the way they do things. When they have to convince the public that the right things are being done, they give these honors in order to prop up the people who are doing the dirty work. And keep in mind, think about the Freemasons who were POIs in this case, who were in Unified Command, who were in the prosecutor's office, and who are throughout this structure. These individuals who are perpetrating this cover-up are infiltrated with a bunch of Freemasons who have a number one oath to protect each other at all cost and above all else. Anyhow, moving on. Please do go check out the Vinnie Politan and Barbara McDonald feature on William Libredo if you'd like to. I'd like to thank them for producing that interview and that piece of work, and it's still on the internet online for all of you to go watch. All right, so moving on, let's see. This is a bit much tonight, so I have to make sure that I move in the correct order. Okay, so first thing we're going to look at is this here. This is called defendant's second motion to dismiss based upon newly discovered, destroyed, and or missing exculpatory and potentially useful evidence, right? Okay. It says in his first motion, the defense detailed how a February 17th, 2017 interview of third-party suspect Brad Holder was destroyed while in possession of law enforcement. At the March 18th, 2024 hearing, Mullen testified that other evidence was also destroyed in 2017. That's right, 70 complete days, and who knows what else was wiped from discovery. Don't forget that it's not just the 70 days of destroyed evidence. Think of all the evidence that was never acknowledged, documented, or handed over to the defense because it was not included in the discovery. Remember, the defense had to pull teeth all along this to get anything that they got, including discovery. Okay? During a recent deposition of Brad Holder, the defense learned that Brad Holder is pretty sure he turned over his phone to law enforcement on February 17, 2017. The prosecution has not turned over any data, extractions, reports, or other evidence from Brad Holder's phone. They believe he's also turned over Logan Holder's phone. The prosecution has turned over data extracted from Logan Holder's phone, but not any data from Brad Holder's phone. Jerry Holman, under oath at a recent deposition, said he believes police just looked through Brad Holder's phone, but encouraged the defense to find out more from FBI. The defense finds it highly unlikely that law enforcement would take the time to collect both Brad Holder's and Logan Holder's phones, but choose to only conduct an extraction of Logan Holder's phone. Okay? On February 17, 2017, documents specifically sought by the defense, Doug Carter's emails with FBI, provided evidence that Brad Holder was a suspect within days of the murder, and certainly on February 17, 2017. State Police Superintendent Doug Carter was aware that Brad Holder was a suspect. Even the FBI agent in Indianapolis, Jay Abbott, was aware that Brad Holder was a suspect. Logan Holder was not mentioned as a suspect. So how would they take both the phones and not extract the suspect's phone, but would extract the suspect's son's phone? Make that make sense. Okay. Why would the law enforcement extract 101 phones, yet not extract Brad Holder's phone? All evidence of Brad Holder's second interview with law enforcement is also missing. Additionally, Brad Holder testified in his deposition that in addition to law enforcement's February 17, 2017 interview, which was taped over, purportedly, law enforcement conducted a second interview of Brad Holder, probably within a year or two of his first interview. Holder further testified at deposition that law enforcement conducted the second interview at the Logansport police station. Sounds familiar, right? Logansport? Who else do we know tied to Logansport? The interview included many questions about Pat Westfall. After the deposition, defense alerted the prosecutor's office that the defense had no phone data extraction from Brad Holder, no evidence of law enforcement's second interview of Brad Holder at Logansport police station. On May 13, 2024, the prosecution advised the defense that they cannot locate an interview of Brad Holder at the Logansport PD and have no record of the phone being downloaded. At a recent deposition, Unified Command's Jerry Holman was asked about how the defense could obtain any information about the second interview. Holman said, "I have no idea," but encouraged the defense to go to the Logansport PD, just like he said, go to the FBI. The defense is not required to locate this exculpatory evidence or potentially useful evidence of third parties. That's a requirement of law enforcement. Sounding familiar? Okay. Also, at said May 2nd, 2024 deposition, Brad Holder told a third different story concerning how many times he met victim Abigail Williams, and that one of Brad Holder's meeting with Abby Williams indeed took place at Patrick Westfall's house. When Jerry Holman was confronted with these ever-changing stories of Brad Holder, Holman stated it's perfectly reasonable that he didn't remember somebody insignificant, meaning Abby Williams. If you only met them twice, you may not remember that, so I don't see exactly what you're asking me, says Holman. When Holman was asked if it were likely that Brad Holder would not remember meeting Abby, when Holder was asked 3 days after the murders, but then 7 years later would remember meeting Abby twice, Holman responded, possibly, yeah. Holman showed no curiosity nor interest whatsoever about Freemason Brad Holder's stories. This attitude supports an argument which defense will later make in this motion that law enforcement has acted intentionally in bad faith to conceal evidence. Patrick Westfall was interviewed on August 17, 2024. The phone extraction from Westfall had no data prior to August 11, 2023, which was the very day that law enforcement contacted him and asked him to come in and be interviewed a week later. In other words, it appears Patrick Westfall erased all his phone data or purchased a new phone after or on the day the police contacted him, August 11, 2023. When Jerry Holman was confronted with this fact, Holman claimed he found nothing unusual, stating, "People erase things all the time." Later, Holman stated he found nothing suspicious about Patrick Westfall concealing his phone data from before August 17th. Holman's attitude towards third-party suspect Patrick Westfall supports the defense's position that law enforcement has intentionally destroyed evidence or acted in bad faith and intentionally not provided missing evidence, such as Brad Holder's second interview, as well as other items. At his August 30th, 2023 interview, Trooper David Vito did not even ask Holder if he would allow the state police to extract his phone, even though it's clear that Holder had brought his phone with him to the interview. Therefore, it's not known whether Holder similarly hid or erased data from his phone, like it appears Westfall hid or erased data from his phone. It's certainly curious as to why David Vito did not request Holder's phone data when Holder brought his phone to that interview. It's also curious as to why David Vito failed to ask Brad Holder one single question about Elvis Fields. It's also curious as to why Vito failed to ask Brad Holder one single question about the incriminating statements that Amber Holder attributed to Brad Holder, detailed in the Franks 1. Vito's failure to ask such important questions to Brad Holder during this August 30th, 2023 interview supports the defense's contention that law enforcement is acting in bad faith. In addition to Holder's missing phone extraction, the evidence of Holder's second interview, as well as Holder's taped over first interview, another key piece of evidence is also missing, and that's the mimicked crime scene photo that was on Brad Holder's social media pages. I'm going to skip some of this. You guys know about that one. How could the state police lose such an important piece of evidence as an image found on a suspect's social media that mimics the crime scene very closely? The defense would proffer that the mimicked crime scene photo was not lost. Logic and common sense dictate that such an important piece of evidence would not be lost by police. As detailed in this memorandum that we're going to read, the defense can show that the missing evidence is exculpatory. The exculpatory nature of missing evidence. Currently, the list of missing evidence that the prosecution has not turned over includes the following: video of Brad Holder's first interview, video of Logan Holder's interview, data from Brad Holder's phone extraction February 17, 2017, video from Brad Holder's second interview at the Logansport police station, audio taken from Brad Holder's second interview, any reports, notes, or documents referring to Brad Holder's second interview, mimicked crime scene photo observed by Trooper Purdy on Brad Holder's social media, and the image Ryan Boucher sent to Trooper Winters. Notice that all the missing items are related to third-party suspect Brad Holder. Note that the prosecution is asking that the defense not be allowed to even mention the name of Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Elvis Fields, Ron Logan, Keegan Klein, Tony Klein. I'm sorry. This evidence, the prosecution failed to turn over until forced to. The Todd Click letter and the accompanying 85-page Odin report, the Elvis Fields interviews, the Rod Abrams interviews, John Messer interviews, Taylor Hornady interviews, Ned Smith interviews, okay? All of the Frank's Memorandum third-party suspect interviews, plus Libby German's phone dump. The prosecution is also asking that the defense not be allowed to mention any third-party suspects or Odinism at trial. And of course, the judge rubber stamped that. When the combined evidence contained on Brad Holder's social media, including images of a rune marked onto Holder's hand that specifically mimics the way the sticks were formed on Abby's body, and the other evidence as detailed in the Franks, the ever-changing stories of Brad Holder, and the simple topic of how many times did you meet Abby Williams should all provide insight into why the defense believes that the missing evidence contained obviously exculpatory evidence. The missing destroyed evidence is exculpatory, but even if the court disagrees, the court should find that the missing destroyed evidence was potentially useful. As detailed in the accompanying memorandum, if this court finds that the missing destroyed evidence is not exculpatory but potentially useful, then the court should dismiss the charges. If it also finds that law enforcement intentionally caused the potentially useful evidence to be destroyed, Franks 1 through 4 provide many details of why the court should believe that law enforcement intentionally caused potentially useful evidence to be destroyed or acted in bad faith. Missing portions of the vital video from Jerry Holman's 10/26/22 interrogation of Richard Allen. That's right, missing portions of the interrogation of Richard Allen. The first few minutes of the interrogation are inexplicably missing. The missing portion of the videotape would have shown Holman discussing Richard Allen's Miranda rights and freedom to leave the interview room, important concepts that might support the legality or illegality of Holman's interrogation. Of course, there's no explanation whatsoever as to why the only portion of the videotaped interrogation missing is a crucial beginning when the Miranda warning would have been read. Jerry Holman lied in his August 10th, 2023 deposition that Brad Holder was never a suspect. That's right, you heard it correctly. In his August 10th, 2023 deposition, when asked if Brad Holder was ever a suspect, Holman said the following: "Not really, no." However, it's clear from reviewing emails between Doug Carter and the FBI that Brad Holder was a suspect very early on in the case. Holder was thought to be a suspect, and his name was known as a suspect even at the highest level of the state police, the superintendent, and even known at Indiana FBI, that is Jay Abbott. The fact that Holman misled the defense by claiming Holder was not really a suspect or not a suspect is evidence of the intentionality of law enforcement involving the concealment of evidence and evidence of bad faith. Furthermore, prosecutor failed to turn over the Todd Click exculpatory evidence for 4 months and then only turned it over after it was obvious that the defense would be aware of this. As detailed in the Franks 1 and numerous other pleadings, the prosecutor chose not to turn over this exculpatory evidence until 4 months later. This Todd Click letter was evidence that 3 law enforcement officers investigated the case, that is, Ferenczi, Murphy, and Click, and they believed that third-party suspects Brad Holder, Patrick Westphal, and Elvis Fields were involved in the murders, not the sole perpetrators, but were involved in the murders. And Todd Click's belief that the evidence supporting their involvement in the murders was much more compelling than the evidence against Richard Allen, which seems to be a common thread throughout all the people who've actually studied this case, researched this case, seen the discovery, know the investigation, interviewed witnesses, and have been involved in the legal defense of Richard Allen. It's hard to believe a much stronger example of exculpatory evidence than the documentation that an FBI agent, that's Greg Ferenczi, a state police officer, Kevin Murphy, and a local police chief, Todd Click, thought that these individuals were involved in these murders and thought that they had the wrong man, Richard Allen, in custody. The fact that the prosecution refused to not immediately turn over this exculpatory information and was only released the information after 4 months is evidence of intentionality of law enforcement involving the concealment of evidence and or evidence of bad faith. Furthermore, the prosecution failed to turn over exculpatory evidence contained in several videotaped statements after the prosecution knew the defense would soon learn of their existence. Okay? Took them 9 months to turn over videotaped interviews that provided exculpatory evidence in terms of blown alibis of third-party suspects, as well as the connectivity of third-party suspects, and also the lies told by third-party suspects concerning their knowledge of each other. The prosecution and law enforcement attempted to conceal the identity of the Purdue professor who did indeed believe that the symbols or signatures left at the crime scene of the Delphi murders were an attempt to convey Nordic beliefs or symbols. They lied and tried to hide the Purdue professor. Prosecution also failed to turn over one key piece of evidence for 9 months after the defense kept requesting, okay? And that's the phone data from Liberty German's phone. Law enforcement possessed this evidence for 5 fucking years prior to Richard Allen's arrest and should have been able to provide that evidence immediately to the defense. However, they hamstringed the defense, okay? They intentionally withheld this phone dump for 9 months, probably because they were fabricating it. A failure of law enforcement to turn over Libby German's phone data or phone for nearly 9 months, concealing exculpatory evidence could have been that the defense could have been exploring, is further evidence of them acting in bad faith or attempting to conceal evidence. Law enforcement also concealed the Blocher report until April 26, 2024. Sergeant Mitch Blocher. Contained in the body of this report was exculpatory information concerning the pings that supports that on February 13th, 2017, the victims were not located at the same scene as they were found on February 14th, 2017. Hold on. It's time to be annoying. Okay, you guys bear with me now. I'm going to be super annoying here. Here we go. Super annoying. Oh my God. That's right. Can I read that again for those in the back? In the Mitch Blocher report, there is ping information supporting that on February 13th, 2017, the victims were not located at the same scene that they were found on February 14th, 2017, which means the timeline is blown away. Okay? Tobe Lesenby contradicted the sworn testimony of Jerry Holman and Tony Liggett concerning the number of people. As a matter of fact, Liggett and Holman testified under oath that only one person committed these murders. That's Richard Allen. Under oath by Liggett and Holman, this would negate the defense's contention that the evidence supports multiple people were involved. However, Tobe Lesenby was deposed, and he stated under oath that Tony Liggett believed multiple people were involved in the murders.
Oh, my God.
This conflicting sworn testimony of law enforcement is further evidence of the intentionality on the part of law enforcement and the prosecution to conceal their actual beliefs concerning the number of people involved in these murders. And it was intended to direct the defense away from the theories that Odinism and third-party suspects were involved in the murders and is evidence of bad faith. No recording of Dan Doolin exists, Doolin stated that he knew he had audio taped. Look at it. Dan Doolin stated that he knew that he had audio taped interviews when conducting interviews of tips and leads. However, he claims that he now believes he never audio recorded the Richard Allen interview. I think I must have not audio recorded it because all the other ones that I had are in a file on my computer, and I listened to each of them just in case they were mislabeled. And every audio I have, and none of them were Mr. Allen's. This interview is crucial as to what Doolin claims Allen told him, and helped establish a timeline that the state used to secure a search warrant and to build their entire timeline to place him at the trails at the time the girls, they allege, were abducted. The defense believed that Richard Allen was tape recorded and that the missing tape supports intentionality on the part of law enforcement and the lies and the changing of the time to put him there at a later time so that he intersects those victims in their timeline. Of course, another piece of destroyed, missing exculpatory evidence. Okay, we've already discussed the mimicked crime scene image. Only so many coincidences can explain away why so much evidence concerning Brad Holder and Odinism is still missing, and why the prosecution failed to turn over much of the evidence that the defense does in fact possess concerning third-party suspects for 9 fucking months or more. And only after the prosecution knew that the defense would soon be learning of the existence of that evidence. The bad faith of law enforcement and prosecution has been proven through the numerous examples of missing and destroyed evidence. And the prosecution has failed to turn over this evidence in a timely manner. Because of the missing evidence being exculpatory in nature, the charges against Richard Allen should have been dismissed. All right. Come on, Prof. Here we go. Next one. Sorry, it's taking me a minute. Okay, this is the testimony of the undercover trooper. Now, this one's pretty interesting, guys. Check this out. In what capacity are you currently employed? We're reading line 14 here. My current rank is Master Trooper Detective. My day-to-day assignment is as a field intelligence officer. Well, what does that mean? Check this out. It means I am responsible for gathering, cultivating, and signing up new informants, confidential human sources, CIs.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Wait. Are you telling me this is the head of the CIs? Master Trooper Detective, responsible for gathering, cultivating, and signing up new informants or CIs. I'm also a liaison officer that works with individual and smaller agencies that may not have the technical capabilities that our department has. Okay, so I interface with the Fusion Center. Okay, let's skip ahead. So let's start with the first one, just so I understand. When you say informants, are you mostly talking about things involving drug trade? Not necessarily. Oh my God. Think about it. Not just drugs. Did you guys hear that? Did you guys hear that?
Bruh.
Okay, so you work with informants of all types? Yes, sir. Give me some other examples, just so I have some context. Patriot groups that might be outside the realm of legal activities. Get ready for this. Biker gangs.
Bruh.
Okay. Oh, okay. Patriot groups. Are you saying white supremacist biker gangs?
Bruh.
There has to be a criminal nexus of some type. Yes, criminals.
Bruh.
Before we can gather. But we just don't stick to drug enforcement. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to keep moving. Okay, here we go. Trying to find the page I'm looking for here. Okay. And then, so did you guys, you and Holman, talk about anything involving the sons of Odin or any of the stuff about Odin? Very briefly, yes. What did you talk about? He said that he was asked about Odinism and a little bit about the figure that was drawn on the tree. What was the nature of that conversation? To tell me I had a deposition. He said he thought it would probably be about Odinism, but he had no further information on it. Did you ask him any questions about what aspect of that or anything like that? He indicated he didn't know, so we didn't pursue that. Did he talk to you about any of the testimony or statements or questions that were asked of him during the deposition? No, he did not. Any other information you reviewed? I looked up the Fehu rune on Google. Fehu, because that was the figure that I recalled being left on the tree. That was really my only involvement. Question, ladies and gentlemen. Is this an admission from the head of the CIs here, from Mr. CI, the biker gang guys? Is your CI chief here admitting that it indeed is a rune on the tree, of a rune of sorts, which he's claiming is a Fehu rune? What did you look up, Fehu? Why did you look it up? Because that was the figure that I recalled being left on the tree. That was really my only involvement in the case, that it had shown up and there were questions about what it might mean. So you only looked it up on Google? I was refreshing my recollection, as well as the fact that runes are very much like the word to. They're depending on how it's used and where it's looked up. There might be multiple meanings for one word. Correct, sir. What in your mind does Fehu mean? I'm going to ask. Fehu quite literally means cattle or livestock. It's often interpreted as wealth or mobile wealth. I've seen it referred to as that, for good luck or hoping some financial gain. Have you spoken with Sheriff Tony Liggett regarding this? No. What about Lesenby? I don't even know the gentleman. No. Any other troopers? No. Okay. Any other materials you reviewed other than the Google search you mentioned? No. Did you generate any reports? No. When did you get involved in this investigation? The crimes occurred on February of 2017. That would have been several months after that. That was pre-COVID. So we were down at the offices quite a bit, and I heard that there was a possibility of a Viking symbol or Viking rune. What? Hold on. Y'all. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here?
Oh my God. Bruh.
So this trooper here is saying that just months after the murder in 2017, just months after these murders, not only did he identify this as a Fehu rune, but he had heard that there were possibly a Viking symbol or Viking rune left on a tree. I had done some research on those regarding an earlier event that we had gathered some intelligence on. So I had some working knowledge of those runes. So in other words, Unified Command did believe they were runes at the crime scene, especially the one on the tree. So what changed? Which earlier event are you referring to regarding these runes? Well, there was a group called the American Guard that was kind of led by a gentleman named Brian James. Brian has a long history. He was associated with the skinheads. He was also associated with the Vinlanders.
Oh my God.
And then he formed the American Guard, all of which were extremely white supremacist based. Brian actually had a criminal history on some violence toward a colored gentleman in Indianapolis. I believe he did some jail time for that. So wait. You're saying that there's a rune on the tree that you're calling a Fehu at Delphi, and you're saying you had knowledge of that because of a prior incident, and the prior incident was an investigation of Brian James, who was associated with the skinheads, the Vinlanders, and the American Guard? So that was my first introduction into deciphering what these runes might mean. This was probably 16, 17-ish. It goes back a while. So a year prior, in other words. It was towards fall. Oh, so 6 months prior. Okay. So 6 months prior to Delphi, you're investigating Brian James and the Vinlanders and these runes. Okay. So when Delphi happens, you're called in to advise on these runes. Okay. Because you're calling them Viking symbols. Okay. Are we seeing here where Unified Command was in 2017? So when Trooper or Officer Purdy, the two of you communicated, what happened after that in terms of your involvement? He and I met, and he could accurately show me what the figure in the tree looked like. And it reminded me of the rune Fehu. And so I looked that up and we spoke about that. And he wanted to know how that may be tied into a crime scene. I still don't know how it ties in, because traditionally that's a rune of luck or wealth. So I don't know how it would have been construed to be in a crime scene. Did you talk on the phone or person? We did both. We met on the phone. We spoke on the phone, but it's hard to do representation on the phone. And Roland and I are friends. We just met for breakfast. Just the two of you? Actually, it was another gentleman with me who happened to be on my day off that day. Who happened to be what? There was another gentleman with me, like a friend or something? Yes. Who was that? Brian Jenkins. Brian Jenkins. I thought you were going to say Brian James. You were kind of throwing me off for a minute. No, though, although we've spoken many times, I wouldn't consider us good buddies. Interesting. Where did you guys meet? Cracker Barrel. So when you meet or any other law enforcement officials in the course of this investigation, did you? Yeah, Mr. Holman, Detective Holman. Tell me when that meeting occurred. That would have probably been 2018 or 2019, pre-COVID, very, very brief. We met on the north side of Indianapolis. What was the purpose of meeting? I delivered something to him. We were still downtown. We had a big printer that our section would occasionally print something off from. He was on the north side of Indy. He said, I'll drive out to him. So he delivered that to him. Do you remember what you delivered to him? It was rolled up. I don't know, sir. So there was just some material that you guys had processed down at your office. Someone had. It was in a tube or something, rolled up. I don't remember. Okay. Did you guys talk about the case at all? Briefly. And what did you talk about? He showed me a drawing or a representation of where the sticks were laid over the girls' bodies.
Oh my God.
And asked if I saw anything regarding runes or anything in there. I didn't, at least not any runes I know of. Now, when we speak of runes, though, there are several different categories of them. They don't all look the same. So you're telling me that Jerry Holman discussed with you the stick formations on the body and asked you if they were runes?
Bruh.
It was drawings of sticks. Do you have that drawing? He showed you? He showed me. I don't have a copy of it. Okay, but so somebody took a piece of paper and just drew it freehand? Yes, sir. And it was representing sticks? Yes, sir. And so what else occurred that during that conversation? That was the extent of the conversation. Okay? So my understanding with speaking with other Ellie officials in this case is that you are a follower of Sons of Odin, or you subscribe to Odinism. I'm being a little bit insensitive here about it. As a religion, well, as a spiritual belief. No, that's not true. No, that isn't true. Okay, that's one of the reasons why we got you in here, because we had heard that. No, that isn't true. Okay. Whoa, 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 whoa. Are you saying the rumor is this dude's also an Odinist?
Oh my God.
Bruh.
Bruh.
Is he an Odinist and denying it? I do have some knowledge of it simply because I started looking again at it through the runes and things like that, but I did find it interesting. Do you have any personal connection to this movement or belief system? No. Whatever phrase I use, cult, some people would call it that. You don't have any personal connection to that? I do not. Okay, we got that cleared up. Okay. Let's forward a bit. Okay, just to make sure we're all on the same page, he shows him the picture of the tree, okay, with the marking on the tree. And the undercover trooper says, it could easily be mistaken for an F, but the fact that both of the horizontal bars point up are very indicative of the rune Fehu, which is often thought to represent cattle. And so in your mind, when you saw that, the angle of the two horizontal bars was kind of what caught your attention? That's correct, sir. Was that something that jumped out pretty quick without spending a lot of time? It was. So in the context, you can set it down if you want. So in the context of you're looking at this, did you draw the conclusion that it appears to be somewhat deliberately placed on the tree rather than some random mark? It appears to have been done accurately to make either an F or a Fehu rune.
Bruh.
It doesn't appear particularly random, like somebody's wiped something off. Are we having a state trooper here who coordinates and recruits the CIs throughout the gangs, verify for us that this is indeed a Fehu rune marked on the tree at Delphi? In contradiction to the other state trooper who claims that it's Libby's hand as she goes to catch herself on the tree and she smears her own blood. How did everyone miss this? Did you discover during the course of your studies with regard to Odinism that there's kind of a legitimate side to this, and then there's kind of a good and evil side, that there's a good side and an evil side? And he agrees. I would say very much so, yes. I would say very much so, yes. Are you confident that there's good people running around? Yes. Are you also confident that there's people running around in this society that subscribe to the system of beliefs that are frankly evil or bad people? Brian James and his followers? Without making a moral based judgment, there are some that believe in this system of, again, philosophy or whatever you want to call it, that have tendencies that are outside of the norm. Most of those revolve around the white supremacy movement. Definitely some very strong feelings by them. And people that subscribe to violence, people that I would say would probably be quick to violence. Okay. Other than the circumstance with Brian James, have you done any other investigation maybe after that regarding this Odinism cult or group? We've seen some of the same runes and things like that show up in some of the prisons. And I've been asked a couple of times about what that might mean by various tattoos or something on a letter. But as far as an investigation, no. Um, I'll skip ahead about the prisons and the runes. Let me represent to you as an officer of the court that this is a photo of one of the girls who was found dead in this case. Do you have any reason to disbelieve that? I do not. Okay. Let me direct your attention to this body of the young woman and specifically the left side. Do you see all these sticks? I do. And nobody's ever showed you these before? I've not seen this picture before. Do you agree with me that those sticks appear to have been placed there intentionally just from the first glance? It would appear so. What? Do you agree that they likely didn't fall off the tree that way? I would say very unlikely. And do those sticks in any way mimic or look familiar in terms of the formation of the stick drawing that Officer Holman gave you when he met with you? I don't remember. Okay. Is there anything about the formation of the sticks on the body that might prompt to be related to any of the Odinistic information that you've gathered? Sure. May I ask you a question? Has this stick been cut or is that a break? Well, I think there's some consensus that it was cut. I don't see anything that's indicative of anything I know would connect this to the runes or Odinistic religions, but it does appear it looks like they were placed there intentionally. Okay? You see what I'm saying about this state trooper here? Hmm? This is kind of contradicting the entire state's narrative, isn't it? All right. These are what I would believe. Now, this is looking at these sticks on the bodies. Trust me. These are what I would believe to be bind runes, where they're combined more than one for a specific purpose. Bind runes, B-I-N-D. They will bind one rune to another. In other words, let's say Fehu, for example, will be construed as a mobile wealth. Well, they might want that in a business enterprise, so they might have another rune that would represent their business, and they would combine this over the top of each other or in some way bind those two together. And so that's what these look like more than standard runes. but they still look like runes to you. They are. If you take off this stick here, I recognize this. I don't remember the name of it, but it signifies traveling. So if you took off the one stick, it looks like a R, right? Correct. That has something to do with safe traveling. I remember that. But again, they've combined it with something else. Okay. Bind runes. I would say that's what these are. Bind runes. These are different than the standard set of runes that I normally see when I look them up. Okay, it's been brought to my attention during this case there might be some association with triangles in the Odinistic belief system. Okay. Did you discover the same information that suggests that these triangles, the triple interlocking triangles, I've seen these in tattoos and amulets. You said an ambulance? Amulet, like a necklace. I've seen this shape associated with some of the runes and stuff before, but again, I'm not sure what's the actual meaning of this is. But you've seen these things together, the rune formations and triangles? Yes, sir. I would say there's some sort of association there. It just happens that Defendant's Exhibit 1 has 3 of those triangles on it. I actually wasn't paying a lot of attention to that, but do you agree with me that there's a similar formation? Yes, it says Valknut. Have you discovered in the course of your research the horns are part of this belief system, like Viking horns, like drinking or blowing horns? Well, any kind of horns, frankly. I'm not talking about car horns. We're talking about horns on animals, you know, depictions of Vikings, things like that. Okay, I remember at an event where Brian James and his friends were, there were some people that appeared to have cow horns stuffed in a holder on their belt. Not all of them, but a few of them. It looked like they had been used for drinking cups or something like that. Did you discover any other association between horns and Odinism during your research? I did not, but I never looked for it. Okay, did you at any time communicate with the chief of police, Beverly Shores? No, sir. Doesn't sound familiar? Not at all. Okay, let's see. They continue talking about runes. I'm going to skip ahead a bit. Okay. There we go. Is there any geographic area in the state where any of these people that you dealt with, the Brian James Webb, are located? I can only go off what I knew when I was looking into them, and I believe that some of that has changed over the years. The American Guard was the group that we were looking into. That actually had officers in several states and different groups, but again, they were centered here in Indiana. Brian lived in Danville, Indiana. Since we looked into him back when he's going through a divorce, I don't know if he still lives there. They pretty well erased all their open source social media. so we don't have any easy access to look to see where they might be. I don't know if the out-of-state chapters are even still up and running. Anywhere else in the state you're familiar with pockets of these people that might exist? I don't know the answer to your question. Usually when they had gatherings or events, they're always at Brian's house. So I don't know where else they might have been throughout the state. Did you know them to be involved with any kind of ritualistic activities when they did have gatherings? I don't know what they were doing. I know at one point they were having a barbecue for many people that attended the Second Amendment rally. Did you know anything else in terms of ritualistic activities? No. Okay. It gives them defendant's exhibit C. If I told you that's one of the crime scene photos of one of the girls, do you have any reason to disbelieve that? I do not know. No, I do not. Just directing your attention, obviously, to the top part of her hair there. Above her hair, do you see those sticks or whatever you want to call them protruding from her head, the two of them? One of them is kind of moving from right to left, one more of a horizontal position. Yes, sir. This isn't a test, but would you agree that at least one of them appears to have been placed there? Yes, sir. So this trooper agrees that the sticks on Abby's hair are placed there intentionally. This one appears to be placed there since it's on top of the hair. Yes, sir. We've all caught on to this, but I want to make sure okay, yes. So would you agree with me generally that it appears that it either landed there or was placed there or ended up there at some point after she was there? Correct. Do those two sticks appear to be the formation or loose formulation of horns of any kind? I can't speak to that. I don't know. You mean like devil type horns? I mean like antlers. Anything like that? I couldn't speak to that. Okay, here's a go. Here's a piece of artwork. Okay, so there's some horns in the photograph. I showed you what we're talking about here, similarities between these two. I can see where you can draw that conclusion, but again, I can't speak with any authority. Okay. And they go through some more photos, including the one of the mimicked crime scene photo they're showing him. So I'm going to skip over that. Okay. Exhibits of the tree, exhibits of the runes, exhibit of the artwork, the horns, placing all of these pieces together. Are these the types of things that you would cause you some real concern if you had been involved in this investigation? Can you rephrase that? Does the totality of all these things concern you that there needs to be some further investigation if you were involved in this? I believe so, yes, sir. So any of these things individually don't mean a lot, right? But when you start putting them together, the totality of them means quite a bit more, doesn't it? As it usually does in any investigation, yes, sir. That's what normal police, again, I'm not a homicide investigator, but they would give me pause for concern to pursue these avenues. Okay. Let's see. They go back into some more Brad Holder. They go into the cutting of a tree, the cutting of the limb. Let me see. Jeez. Yeah, the redacted portion, it's hard to pick up on where they're coming from, but they're talking about a Hagao rune, which is hail. One of the meanings of it is hail. Was the rune you're talking about earlier, you say something that starts with an A? By chance, Ansuz? Stand by. Okay. Ansuz. Ansuz. Right. Earlier you said right about, you had said about an Ansuz rune. That one appears on the artwork at the bottom of the tree. It appears to be a Fehu rune. Okay. Have you ever heard of a guy named Johnny Messer? No, sir. Elvis Fields. I heard someone mention Elvis, but I have no idea who Elvis Fields is. Rod Abrams. No, sir. Did you ever tell Purdy that you practiced Odinism? I haven't practiced it, but I know a lot about it. Did you ever tell Purdy or anyone else something to the effect that there are perhaps good Odinites and bad Odinites? Probably. Okay. Do you know Trooper Kevin Murphy? I know he came through recruit school. I've never worked with him. Okay. He thought you put a little talk on about Odin and was there when it happened. Then he's mistaken. Okay. I've never done anything like that. Would it be fair to say if there's anybody in the state police ranks through the state that knows about Odinism, is there anybody that you know of in the state police ranks that knows more about Odinism than you do, sir? Not that I'm aware of. So it could be said that you're kind of the go-to Odin guy in the state police. I don't know. I would phrase it that way. When we're downtown pre-COVID, at any time there were runes specifically that were brought up in the case or needed to be identified, like from a tattoo or something. Usually they brought it to my desk and asked my opinion of it. Okay, I got to tell you, you're being on Brad Holder's webpage, whatever it is, that disturbs me. Does it disturb you? Several of the pictures you've shown me this morning are disturbing, but yes, that one is. Did you ever hang out with this cast of characters anywhere else other than at the State House? I've been to a couple of events where Brian James and his people, his followers were there, but they've all been large public gatherings like Second Amendment rally. I don't recall any offsite other venues. It used to be easy to keep track of them. Do you think there's a reason why they're not on social media? I have no idea. All right. Do you know about what time frame they went under the radar? About 2020, a little before. Okay. Now, I'm going to pull this down. Oh, excuse me, my back's hurting. So what do you have here? You have the Indiana State's Police self-proclaimed Odin or Viking or rune expert. Okay? Hey, everyone in the chat, chill out. Okay, chill out in the chat. Get with the story. We're talking about shit that matters. You're distracting me. We're talking about the expert on the Odinists, on the runes, on the Vinlanders, and all of this shit. Okay? The trooper, the master trooper, who's the expert for the Indiana State Police on this, also coincidentally, the head recruiter for the CIs for the state police. Are you getting me? He's acknowledging that what we're seeing at the crime scene are indeed runes. And that this was known about in the beginning. And that Holman and Unified Command was asking him his opinion on, in the beginning, he was advising on these runes. It's important. This trooper here contradicts the entire state's analysis of this crime scene. Did no one catch that? That's important. All right. Let's see. Okay, here we go with here we go. This is part 2 of the Franks memorandum, evidence that connects the Odinists to the murders. Okay, you see we're on page 46 here. Unified Command claims that Odinism was ruled out early because of the findings of a Purdue professor. However, Unified Command now claims it can't remember the name of the Purdue professor. Okay, that remember, this is the evidence of them hiding the Purdue professor here. "12-page Odin report. As a part of discovery, defense received a 12-page Word document that provided a summary of Kevin Murphy's investigation of the Odinist angle, called the Odin Report. The Odin Report was created by Kevin Murphy, who was independently curious. Murphy, Ferenczi, and Todd Click were knocking on doors, conducting interviews, and going wherever the evidence led them. Immediately following an interview, Kevin Murphy would reduce key aspects of that interview onto a Word document. Over time, the Odin Report grew from a single page from his first interview with Mary Jacobs to 12 pages, with the last pages used for summing up his thoughts from all the interviews he had conducted. Surprisingly to Murphy, even though he was handing over to Unified Command powerful evidence that painted a clear picture of who was involved in the murders, Holman and Tony Liggett did not seem interested. Okay. The defense would encourage the court to stop and review this document before continuing to read the memorandum, as the Odin Report will be discussed over the next several pages. Brad Holder's connection to the crime scene. Amber Holder tells a very disturbing story, as can be viewed on page 9 of the Odin Report. Amber Holder told law enforcement that she said Brad spoke of Patrick one time when he was intoxicated and said that he and Patrick got into a fight and they no longer speak to each other. He told her that he and Westfall were in the woods near a river conducting a ritual. One of them said or did something that the other did not agree with, and they no longer talked to each other. She said the river was near Patrick's house. Patrick Westfall was living in Delphi at the time. This document is a narrative report of what is believed to be the only interview police conducted of Patrick Westfall. The address where Patrick Westfall was living was 3.1 miles or roughly a 7-minute drive to the cemetery, which is the closest entry point to where the girls were murdered. Brad Holder admitted that he spent every weekend hanging out at Patrick Westfall's house in Delphi and participated in as a true ceremonies. Amber Holder tells a second equally disturbing story. When interviewed a second time, Amber discussed another conversation she had with Brad. Brad became very nervous and told her that she needed to stay away from Westfall or she would end up dead. She said that Brad told her Westfall and his crew were responsible for killing the girls in Delphi and a fire that killed 2 girls. Amber Holder stated that Brad told her that Westfall and his crew were responsible for the murders of the girls in Delphi and a fire that killed 2 girls. I asked her if she knew of the Flora fires that killed 4 girls, and she said she was not so familiar with any fires that killed any children until Brad mentioned it today. She said Brad may have been talking about that fire, but had the number killed wrong. She said Brad told her that Westfall and his crew had friends in several states and that they have no problem killing race traders. I asked her to clarify what a race trader is, and she stated she believed it meant white people who mix with other races. Amber said that Brad told her that Westfall belonged to a group called the Vinlanders in 22. Brad told her that Westfall had many people backing him up and powerful friends. She said that Brad was very nervous while telling her these things and was like whispering, like he was fearful someone else would hear him. She said that throughout the conversation, Brad was constantly telling her to stay away from Westfall. He told her Patrick had killed a lot of people, and it didn't matter if they were innocent or not. Amber truly believes Brad is scared of Westfall. Prior to Amber leaving, she said that Brad told her to stay away or stay off Westfall's radar. I can only protect you so much if you keep asking questions. He also told her if Westfall found out she was married to him, that she would be in danger. Brad also questioned her on why Westfall would be going on a date that he was under the impression that Westfall was married or engaged to someone. On April 7th, 2017, Holder posted a photo of a hand marked with the exact rune found on Abby's body. Trooper Purdy and Trooper Winters were aware of an eerie image on Brad Holder's Facebook page of what appeared to be a faked murder scene mimicking Abby and Libby's scene. Brad Holder created a creepy painting of a man he believed to be Odin, hanging upside down from a tree with legs posed similar to Abby's at the crime scene. The painting also contained 2 hidden Easter eggs, including a real F rune or red F rune at the base of a tree, just like the red F rune painted on the tree at the Delphi crime scene. 2016 Brad Holder video from Facebook shows a pagan ritual with the important part at the end. A man looking like Patrick Westfall appears to be using fingers to paint a tree. F rune formed with sticks on the ground resembles F rune found on the tree in Libby's blood. Meme that Brad Holder posted on 2/17/2017. That's right. 2/17/2017, right after the murder, same day he was interviewed, discussed how real friends will help you move dead bodies and the friends will keep their mouths shut. This meme was deleted at some point, but recovered by law enforcement. Your real ones don't judge you or ask a bunch of questions. They help you move the body and never speak of it again. 2 a.m. Facebook post 12 hours after the girls go missing, identically same time as the horrific screams at Delphi. Brad Holder makes a post saying his testosterone is through the roof. Post later deleted. from Reddit, I was born in a small town. It's been a while, but if I remember correctly, they were available via web sleuths. I believe it was sometime in May 2019. I used a program called Audacity to listen to them. Some were paying for a program called Broadcastify to listen. It was very confusing because there were multiple agencies using the same dispatch, and they were separated by right and left ears. I stopped using web sleuths in 2020 because it was so crazy. I believe I saved the files on my computer at work, but I retired in the mid 2019, so I don't have access anymore. These two young women heard the screams. Taya Miller and Kat Cole. No, it was three young women. Okay, so let's straighten that out first, okay? You had Taya Miller, you had Chastity Fox, and you had Catherine Cole, okay, who heard the blood-curdling screams at 2 a.m. Kat was shot and killed by her boyfriend, Jerome Weiss, on 2/22/2017, the day of the Delphi press conference, when the audio clip of Down the Hill was released. It was ruled accidental, but Jerome Weiss is a violent man. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Where am I here? Although Brad Holder told police he went to work, straight to the gym to work out, here is Brad Holder at 2 a.m. purportedly at a fitness center proclaiming his energy and testosterone is through the roof right now. Why was his testosterone so high? Why was his energy level so high? Why did he claim to go to the gym at 2 a.m. when he also claimed to have been at the gym just a few hours earlier? Why was he at the gym when he was supposed to be at work in a couple of hours? Did he go to work the next day? Why did he delete the Facebook post? Why would he be saying these things when his son is purportedly upset about his girlfriend missing, as the girls had not been found when Holder posted this message? Brad Holder's Facebook page links him to Elvis Fields in Rushville, Indiana. Elvis has admitted to participating in the murders. Elvis has admitted to participating in the murders and now being part of a gang, even providing intimate details of the crime scene that only those participating in the murder would know. Elvis followed Brad Holder on Facebook and even recreated Brad Holder's Facebook post. Holder's alibi was not scrutinized, and evidence supports Holder recruited mentally infirm Elvis Fields to assist in the abduction and murders while Holder tried to stand behind a shady alibi. Oh, did someone clock out for Holder? Did someone clock out for Holder? Did Chase actually watch the video? Did law enforcement watch the video alluded to by Chase? And if so, what did they see? Even if Holder's truck was viewed, was Holder the person driving the truck? If Holder's truck was viewed on video, was Holder the person driving the truck as it left the work site? Did anyone have Holder's badge? Did police ever consider Holder convinced his minions to abduct and participate in sacrificing the girls until he arrived? Evidence supports this theory, including a sketch of a man observed milling around the High Bridge in the spot of the famous video. That sketch closely resembles Elvis Fields. Even Trooper Purdy can't deny the fact. Brad Holder was from Logansport, Indiana, close to Delphi. Patrick Westfall was from Delphi, Indiana. Johnny Messer was from Rushville. Elvis Fields was from Rushville. Rushville's Johnny Messer was a Vinlander and good friends with Brad Holder from Logansport. Rushville's Johnny Messer was a Vinlander and good friends with Vinlander Pat Westfall from Logansport. Rushville's Johnny Messer recruited for the Vinlander gang all the time. Investigators learned in the summer of 2016 Johnny Messer was recruiting men that lived in his Rushville apartment complex and attending Vinlander meetings. Also in the same summer, 2016, Elvis Fields was already mimicking and recreating Brad Holder's Facebook post. The fact would provide evidence that Johnny Messer had recruited Elvis Fields and introduced him to Brad Holder and Elvis following the group's leader, and that Elvis was emulating Holder. The recruiter Johnny Messer was a friend acquaintance of Elvis Fields from Rushville. The recruiter Johnny Messer therefore knew both Brad Holder and Elvis Fields. and Patrick Westphal. Johnny Messer admitted in his October 13, 2018 interview that Rod Abrams, Ned Smith, and Elvis were all interested in joining the same club that he and Holder were involved in, but he claimed that he did not think the Vinlanders would be interested in him. Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were known for taking advantage of mentally infirm men. When mentally infirm men wanted to join Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal's gang, they would take advantage of these men, including having these mentally infirm men perform tasks. Elvis Fields was a mentally infirm man. Trooper Kevin Murphy described Elvis as having the mental capacity of maybe a 7 or 8-year-old. Evidence provided by law enforcement shows Elvis Fields 125 miles away with no connection to Delphi or Logansport was following Brad Holder on Facebook. Evidence provided by law enforcement shows Elvis Fields was not only following Holder, but Elvis was also emulating Holder and taking the time to recreate Holder's Facebook posts in the year leading up to Abby's and Libby's murders. Evidence mimicking of Holder's post shows Elvis was enamored of Holder. Holder was known to prey on lower functioning members of society. Was Holder grooming Elvis, hoping that down the road Elvis would do his bidding? Did Elvis actually do Holder's bidding? An eyewitness observed a man within a few hundred yards of the high bridge when the girls were abducted. That man looks like Elvis Fields. The name of the eyewitness is Teresa Liebert. She lived on the same side of the high bridge, only 560 yards from the very place where the famous Down the Hill video was taken. Around 8:30 on the morning of the 13th, Teresa Liebert observed a man on 625 West near her house, near the mailboxes, resembling Elvis Fields. She observed the homeowners walk by their mailboxes. She's never observed the homeowners walk by their mailboxes because of the distance to the mailboxes. They drive their vehicles. She's never seen this man before. Teresa, sitting higher in the truck, had a good view of the man's face. She, in fact, turned to her husband and says, "What do you think he's doing?" After passing the man, they exited their truck. After exiting the truck, she looked in the direction and noticed he was gone. She did not see him on the road. She believes the man had to immediately intentionally hide after they passed him. Even the state trooper Purdy had to admit that the Teresa Liebert sketch and the photo of Elvis Fields resemble one another. After the girls were murdered, Elvis told his sister that he's now part of a gang. Was the gang mentioned by Elvis the Vinlanders, and was the brother Brad Holder? Again, these are the types of questions the monumentally inept Unified Command should have been asking. Very early on, multiple tipsters contacted the tip line requesting Brad Holder be investigated as a suspect, but Liggett and Unified Command quickly cleared him despite mounting evidence linking Holder to Abby Williams and the crime scene. Okay. Let's see. Elvis Fields. I'm now part of a gang and have a brother. If my spit is found on the girls, but I can explain it, would I still be in trouble? On August 22nd, 2018, he tells Joyce Moffett, his sister, "I am in a lot of trouble. I'm going away for a long time. I was on that trail and that bridge with those girls when they were murdered. There were 2 other people with me when it happened. I spit on one of the girls." Okay? Elvis lied to police, claiming he didn't know Johnny Messer, even though Johnny Messer said he not only knew Elvis, but that Elvis was interested in joining his and Brad's Vinlander crew. Elvis's purported alibi. Rod Abrams lied about where he and Elvis were on February 13th, 2017, and Rod Abrams' fake alibi conflicted with the alibi Elvis provided. Elvis described forming horns out of sticks and placing them on Abby's head, and the crime scene photos confirm that statement. All right. I believe that maybe I'm where I want to be. Let me see. Uh, okay. Keegan Kline and Jerry Kline. Keegan Kline is the son of Jerry Anthony Tony Kline. He was 22 years old in February 2017, and he and Jerry Anthony Tony Kline resided in Peru, Indiana. Detective David Vito testified that Keegan Kline was communicating with Liberty German using a fake Snapchat under the name of Anthony underscore Shots in the days leading up to February 13th, 2017. The content of these messages is unknown. Oh, it's known, all right. He further testified that Keegan Kline admitted to driving to Delphi, Indiana with his father, Jerry Anthony Tony Kline, on February 13th, 2017, and that Keegan Kline waited in the vehicle while Tony Kline went to the woods in the area where Abby and Libby's bodies were found. Detective David Vito testified that Keegan Kline stated that when Tony Kline returned to the vehicle, he had blood on him. Roland Purdy further testified that Keegan Kline admitted that they discarded a knife in a river when they were driving home. All of this evidence creates an inference that Keegan Kline and Jerry Anthony Kline murdered or participated in the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Ron Logan. The bodies of Abby and Libby were located on February 14, 2017, on the property of Ron Logan. His physical build is consistent with the individual in the video captured by Libby's phone. His voice is consistent with that of the voice in the audio. Much like the facts in Allen, the evidence that the third parties killed the girls in this matter is exculpatory, unique, and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. The crime scene included many findings that the killers practiced as a true, and it was a ritualistic crime scene. To be exculpatory, evidence must clear or tend to clear Mr. Allen of alleged fault or guilt. Richard Allen has zero ties to Azatru, Odinism, Villanders, or pedos. Unlike Keegan Kline, Tony Kline, Ron Logan, Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields. The above evidence is exculpatory, unique, and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. The above evidence that the state wants to hide from the finder of fact is admissible for two reasons. It demonstrates the lack of investigation and failures with the investigation, and the distinct possibility, if not a high probability, that people other than Richard Allen killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Detectives with the Delphi investigation seek information. While investigating the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, detectives with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office and Indiana State Police, that means Unified Command, have uncovered an online profile named Anthony Shots. This profile was used from 2016 to 17 on social media apps, including but not limited to Snapchat and Instagram. Anthony Shots' profile used images of a known male model and portrayed himself as being extremely wealthy and almost owning numerous sports cars. The creator of this fictitious profile used this information while communicating with juvenile females to solicit nude images, obtain their addresses, and attempt to meet with them in order to abduct them. Picture below, you'll see images of the known male model and the fictitious Anthony Shots profile. We have already identified the male in the images. The male is not a person of interest. Detectives seeking any information about the person who created the Anthony Shots profile request that you send the tips. Investigators would like any individual that communicated with, met, or attempted to meet with the Anthony Shots profile to contact law enforcement utilizing this tip line. Please provide as much information as possible. For example, when you communicated, how you communicated, what social media apps, and if Anthony Shots attempted to meet you or obtain your address. If you have saved information, images, conversations, please attach them to your email. Defendant's motion to preserve and produce specific evidence. Richard Allen, by counsel, met with inmate Reese Davis at Newcastle. Reese was in the unique position of having met both Keegan Kline and Ron Logan during their stays at Newcastle. He talked with Ron Logan about the Delphi murders on multiple occasions, and over the course of time, Logan confessed to his involvement in the murders along with 2 other people. During these conversations, Logan provided certain details of the crime that only the actual killer would know, but never divulged who the other 2 people involved were. In or around March 2024, Keegan Kline was placed in the same area as Reese Davis, and at some point learned that Reese had talked with Ron Logan while Logan was incarcerated at Newcastle. Over time, Keegan began questioning Reese Davis as to his conversations with Ron Logan and whether Logan had ever mentioned his name. Reese began to realize that Kline may have been one of the other members of the crew that Logan described as being involved in the murders. Over time, Keegan began to reveal information about the Delphi murders that corroborated the details Ron Logan revealed to Reese Davis. Some of the details Keegan Kline provided to Reese Davis are the types of details that could only be known by someone involved in the killings. The conversations between Reese Davis and Keegan Kline occurred all the way up to the guilty verdict, at which time Kline expressed relief that he would no longer be a viable suspect in the murders due to Richard Allen's conviction. Not knowing whether Richard Allen could be the 3rd person involved in the murders, Reese asked Keegan Kline whether Mr. Allen was the 3rd person involved in the murders. Keegan Kline replied that Richard Allen was not the 3rd person and had nothing to do with the murders. Keegan Kline further revealed to Reese Davis that he and Logan knew each other through the selling and sharing of child pornography that they shared on burner phones, and that further that he and Logan would see each other every 3 to 6 months so Kline could assist Logan with using these burner phones because Logan was inept working with electronic devices. Reese further explained that once Keegan Kline began revealing his role in the murders, sometime in the summer and fall of 2024, before Mr. Allen's trial, he began sending letters to McClellan providing many of the details of his conversations with Keegan Kline. Reese Davis indicated that he believes he sent as many as 7 or 8 letters to McClellan's office and presumed that McClellan was sharing the contents of those letters with Richard Allen's defense team. Attorney Baldwin met with Reese Davis on March 27, 2024, and learned very limited information from Reese, who encouraged Baldwin to watch a videotape interview law enforcement conducted years earlier. At their February 12, 2025 meeting, Reese Davis further admitted that when Attorney Baldwin met with Davis on March 27, 2024, that he did not provide all of the details he knew at the time to Attorney Baldwin for 2 reasons. One, he had not yet heard of the many details that Keegan Kline ultimately provided him, including that Keegan was involved in the crime and that he knew Ron Logan. And 2, at that time he met with Attorney Baldwin in 2024, he could not be sure whether Richard Allen was one of the other 2 people that Ron Logan described as being involved in the murders. Mr. Davis stated that he was guarded during that March 27, 2024 meeting with Baldwin because he did not necessarily want to assist Richard Allen's defense counsel if he was one of the 3 men that Ron Logan stated was involved in the murders. Again, in his March 27, 2024 meeting with Baldwin, Reese Davis told Baldwin that he could learn the details of what Reese told law enforcement by watching his videotaped interview that law enforcement should have in their possession from when they interviewed him sometime years before in 2017. At their February 12, 2025 meeting, Reese Davis was shocked to learn that Baldwin had never received this videotaped interview. Following his March 27, 2024 visit with Reese Davis, Baldwin emailed Nick McClellan and Stacy Diener requesting that they turn over law enforcement's videotaped interview of Reese Davis. To date, prosecution has never provided any videotaped interview to the defense, nor explained why it has not done so. The approximate 8 letters Reese Davis claims he sent McClellan in the months leading up to trial will contain multiple layers of exculpatory evidence the defense could use to further its investigation as to whether certain facts contained in those letters could be verified through crime scene photographs, digital data, and a variety of other investigative means. Defense counsel has never seen the Davis letters, known of their existence, until after trial when defense met with Mr. Davis around February 12, 2025. Also, the prosecutor has never informed the defense counsel of the existence of these letters. On February 12, 2025, defense counsel Baldwin sent Nick McClelland an email and his in-house investigator, Steve Mullen, requesting they produce those letters and any video recording in their possession. McClelland's response was vague, non-responsive, dismissive, and did not indicate whether he ever even received those letters, whether he sent those letters to the defense. In other words, he never confirmed nor denied the existence of such letters. On February 13, 2025, Attorney Baldwin sent another email to McClelland asking straightforward questions. Did you receive multiple letters from Reese Davis? Did you turn those letters over? These should be easily answered and quickly answered. McClelland never received such letters. He should know that answer immediately. If McClelland did receive such letters, he should know that answer immediately. If he did receive such letters, he should be able to quickly identify and send them to the defense. As of the time of this filing, McClelland has failed to answer these simple, straightforward questions. Defense reviewed all e-discovery and found no such letters. All emails found no such emails. Request the court order McClelland, as well as any law enforcement agency, to preserve any letters from Reese Davis and turn them over immediately. Similarly, request to preserve any video recording of an interview with Reese Davis and further to turn it over immediately. As you can see, it's a total disaster, okay, regarding these letters and video from Reese Davis. It's to be expected, right? Keegan Kline. This is Jerry Holman being deposed, okay? Was he a suspect? Yes. Is he still a suspect? I think he's suspected of communicating with the girls, but the evidence through our investigation indicates he was not in the area during the homicides. And was he kind of like Ron Logan, another person where there were considerable resources from all your agencies that were directed toward him? Yes. Did Keegan Kline ever admit that he actually participated in this crime? Yes. Tell me what that admission was. Keegan Kline admitted setting up a meeting with his dad and a guy in Delphi initially, Ron Logan. He changed his story and said that it was him and his dad. And he said that he rode over to the bridge and his dad went to meet the girls and he stayed in the Jeep, I believe it was a red Jeep, which we located the Jeep. He also said they threw some items off a bridge. We searched the bridge, found no items. We used every investigative technique we could to try to find evidence indicating he was involved, and we could not, other than him being Anthony Schatz communicating with the girls and setting the meeting up. Do you have any doubt in your mind that he was Anthony Schatz? Nope. In fact, he was basically some ways admitted indirectly to some of that recently. Yes. Was there ever a time you definitely excluded him because of an alibi? Nope. So the reason we eliminated him from actually being at the crime scene is because we know he didn't ride with his dad on the route that he took, because the video shows. We also know he's actively downloading child porn on his phone at a residence in Peru. Yeah, Keegan said to Reese and to another inmate, he had an app on that phone that was active to make it look like he was home in Peru. During the time frame we believe the crimes occurred, he was actively using his phone. No, he was running an app on his phone that made it look active. Was it consistent that he said he was there and that his dad did it? Did he ever ask you specifically for any consideration, as we say in the business, in exchange for information he was giving you? He wanted to be put in witness protection. He never asked for any consideration as far as plea bargains. But he was wanting to basically give us this information to get put on a witness protection program. There was no agreement between you, he, or his representative that if he sat and talked to you, he was going to get ABC in return? Not me, the prosecutor might have made. No, Prosecutor McClellan. He probably communicated with Jeff Sinkovics. How do you know that? I know there was communications, but I don't know. So at the time your team sat down with him and talked to him, you're not aware of any deals that were made where he would get something in return for providing information? Whether accurate or not accurate? No. Why are you kind of hesitating? Well, at one point, I know the prosecutor, Nick McClellan, was going to offer him Keegan Klein immunity. But I think that's different from what you're asking. So I said this before. Are you telling me Nick McClellan was going to offer Keegan Klein immunity and all Keegan wanted was witness protection? Let's talk about Tony Klein. Was he a suspect in the case? Yes. And all these agencies still working on his angle too? Yes. Was there a point in which he was definitively excluded? I think so. I mean, we exhausted all other efforts. At this time, with the information we have, we can't put him in Delphi or on the bridge. He was, through forensic evidence that we got through the digital phone data. He was also given a polygraph, and there's no evidence. We searched his house. We searched his phone. Like I said, there's no evidence indicating. Did he have an alibi that day? I don't recall. I think he had an alibi, but Dave Vito would be good. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's go to Dave Vito. This is Dave Vito. Libby German. Is it fair to say that early on it was discovered she was communicating with others, people who lived out in the outside world? One of those individuals identified as Anthony Schatz? Yes, sir. And my recollection is that were there communications between Liberty German and Anthony Schatz? Yes, sir. And my recollection is that those came on both Snapchat and I think Instagram. I believe just Snapchat. Okay. At least that I was able to find records for. Did you conduct an investigation into the identity of Anthony Schatz? So in 2017, I did not. But I was not part of the investigation in 2017. I started an investigation into Anthony Schatz in March of 2020. At the time, had there already been an investigation into the identity of Anthony Schatz's profile? Who was behind that? Yes, sir. So you were working with someone else's investigative product? That's correct. And is it fair to say that the individual was an individual by the name of Keegan Klein? Yes, sir. Okay. So you're really reaching out with this press release to the public. That's correct. You were seeking public assistance through a public portal, advertising basically, asking for assistance for that. Yes. It's a formal press release done by the Indiana State Police. And the intention is to disseminate that information really around the world, theoretically, right? Right, to try to obtain information, correct. Well, is it fair to say at some point through your work investigators, it was determined that there was a gentleman by the name of Keegan Klein? There was a man by the name of Keegan Klein who was associated with that profile? Yes. And where did Mr. Klein live? In Peru, 67 East Canal. And just generally speaking, that Keegan Klein was first approached about his association with the Anthony Schatz profile, I believe it was February 25th, 2017. What? Where's my annoying sound effects? Hold on. We need a, oh my God. Hold your ears, guys. It's going to be loud.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. February 25th. Was this 11 days? Less than 2 weeks after the murders of Abby and Libby, they go to Keegan Klein's house with the Anthony Shots profile. All right. Is it accurate to say there was confirmation, there was communication between Anthony Shots and Liberty German leading up to February 13th? Yes, sir. And even on February 13th? Yes, sir. So that's undisputed in your mind that there were communications between the two? Yes, sir. Do you believe that Keegan Klein was the communicator, at least on the Anthony Shots end, for the most part? Do you believe that there may have been more than one communicator? It's possible. And who would that other communicator have been? His father? Tony Klein, yes. Whom he lived with? Correct. So Tony Klein was also consumed into this investigation along with his son Keegan. Is that correct? That's correct. And you're generally familiar with the investigation around these two people. Yes, sir. During the course of your investigation, did you discover that Keegan Klein owned a firearm? Yes, I did. Did you recover the firearm? Process it? I do not believe we were able to locate it. Oh, but you saw some photos he had a firearm. Correct. Was that firearm of interest to you? It was. Tell the judge why. It was a Smith & Wesson 40 caliber firearm.
Oh my God.
Ooh. Bruh.
Bruh.
You mean the identical type of firearm that could have left the markings on this round that you tried to put on Richard Allen? Is it fair to say that when the crime scene was processed and there was recovered from the scene an unspent round near the bodies of the girls? That's correct. That it was a 40 caliber round? Yes, sir. And so one of the reasons you're interested in this firearm is because it's the same caliber as a round found at the crime scene? Yes, sir. But you're never able to recover the gun? No, sir. Do you agree that there's a belief that sex may have been a motive in the DELPHI case?
Bruh.
Yes, sir. Do you agree that that would have involved 2 minors? Yes, sir. And do you agree that Mr. Klein had a lot of material on his phones and tablets and electronic devices related to sex with minors? Yes, sir. Is it accurate to say that a lot of the Keegan Klein Anthony Shots profile material was current? In other words, he was transmitting this material close in time to this case? Yes, sir. Is it fair to say that he was denying any connection whatsoever to Liberty German? Yes, sir. Denying any responsibility for child pornography? Yes, sir. Lying to you and your team when he was approached in 2017? Yes, sir. Lying about everything? Yes, sir. He wiped information from his phones? Yes, sir. Do you acknowledge that he was not able to offer you up an alibi for February 13th that you could corroborate? That is correct.
Bruh.
He gave multiple different stories. He gave information on what he was doing, and it changed a little over time. He gave inconsistent stories about his alibi over the course of investigation. Correct. But you were never able to clear his alibis or any of those versions, right? Ultimately, we were able to, through his phone data, show he was at his residence using his phone that day. No, it was an app running on his phone. Well, his father also had access to it. Potentially, he lived with his father, correct. And you had concerns about his father's involvement in this case as well, correct. So there was an occasion where there was an interview set up at an Air Force base, that's Grissom, August 2022. So was there a significant amount of resources directed towards Keegan Klein and his involvement in this case in 2022? That's correct. And you were in charge. And I believe Officer Holman might have been involved with that interview at Grissom as well. From that interview, did Mr. Klein admit that he was at the trail on February 13th, 2017 to your team? He advised that he was in the area with his father at the time. So he lived in Peru, right? That's correct. And we're talking about Delphi. So he's saying he's in another place here in Delphi? Yes, sir. When you say in the area, I mean, you're talking about here in Delphi? He said that. And he acknowledged specifically that he was actually at the cemetery that's located near the trail? That's correct. Where the bodies were found? Yes, sir. At some point, did your team set up to make arrangements to have Mr. Klein transported to describe to your team what happened on February 13th, 2017? Yes, to describe the way that was taken to the cemetery, the way they drove down there. Is it fair to say his lawyer didn't participate? You just took him in your own car? I did not. Who did? Trooper Holman. Is it accurate to say Mr. Klein told your team that he had taken his father to the cemetery? I don't remember which one said or what he or who drove, but they both went to that cemetery. Yes. Is it accurate to say that his father at one point got out of the Jeep and walked into the wooded area? That's correct. And did he say his father came back at some point later in time? Yes, sir. And did he tell you that occurred in the daylight hours? Yes, sir. And it was on the day when the girls came up missing? Correct. Did he tell your team when his father came back, his father actually had blood on his pants? Yes, sir. And his father got back in the car with him? I'm not sure if he said it was on his pants, but he said he had blood on him. Did he tell you his father ultimately did not speak specifically about what he had done when he was in the wooded track? That's correct. I believe he said they had a good time. And he said his father, meaning he met, that his father said they, meaning he's with someone else, had a good time? Correct. Referring that he was with somebody else in the wooded track? That's correct. To be fair, this is what Keegan Klein told your investigative team at Grissom in 2022. That is correct. Did he also communicate to you that at some point after that, there was some type of weapon discarded? He told us before they got home, they went over a bridge and he threw a cell phone into the river. And I believe he said his father threw a knife into the river. By logical extension, that knife may have been used in the crime. That's correct. So what did your team try to do to recover this evidence? We organized a search of that river, and that's the Wabash River? That is correct. All right. So what's going on here? What's going on here when you have a handful of third-party suspects who were legitimate POIs, who legitimately confessed to these crimes? And this handful of third-party suspects, who several of have confessed to committing these crimes, not only are they protected by law enforcement, shielded by the judge, protected by the prosecutor, but you have an entire apparatus in the state structure protecting this handful of third-party suspects, keeping their secrets. And as I mentioned, you have a whole gang operating out here on the internet protecting this handful of third-party suspects. What is it about this handful of third-party suspects that would cause all of this structure, all of these individuals, to protect them in this manner? It's a group effort. What it looks like is there's a community that has come together for the specific purpose of burying the truth about what happened to these girls, to keep the secret. Surely it's not for any one of these third-party suspects who would protect Keegan Kline, who would protect Tony Kline, who would protect Ron Logan, who would protect Johnny Messer, who would protect Elvis Fields, who would protect Pat Westfall, who would protect Brad Holder. What is it that they would protect? The confessions of Elvis Fields have more substance than the confessions of Richard Allen. The confessions of Brad Holder to Amber Holder have more substance than those of Richard Allen. The confessions of Keegan Kline have more substance than those of Richard Allen. And the confessions of Ron Logan have more substance than that of Richard Allen. You've got a handful of confessions from a handful of third-party suspects who have substance. All you got out of Richard Allen were a few willy-nilly, all over the place, confession-like statements in the course, in the depths of a mental health crisis, schizophrenic delusions and paranoia and depression. Like Reese Davis says, they took all of the details that Ron Logan and Keegan Kline had given him and that he had given to them, and they used those details to place onto Richard Allen to secure a conviction, to string together some sort of evidence. This is how the community colluded to bury the truth of this tragedy, to keep the secret. Now, what is a secret? It's my opinion. It's a Dropbox. And hey, maybe it's a sacrifice. Maybe it's both. What's worth protecting on this level? You got a bunch of CIs, a bunch of pedophiles, what's the secret? Look at what we have all been through. Insanity, death threats, cyber stalking, gang stalking, shit sent to our homes, family members contacted, jobs contacted. Unbelievable smear campaigns. Look at the fright on this guy's face.
This morning, we're shining.
Sorry. Look at the fright on this guy. What happened here? When have you ever seen this in just a sexually motivated murder by a single psycho? What is this? Where's the knife? Look at what happened to this guy. Look what happened to this guy. It's bad. Really, really bad. And this has become so obvious to everyone out there. Everyone. It's really obvious. I mean, most people I come across say they absolutely know that Rick Allen was wrongfully convicted. And a majority of them say they absolutely know he's factually innocent. How can you have a guy be so obviously wrongfully convicted on zero evidence, manufactured evidence? How can this be allowed to exist? We're in 2026. I mean, this is similar. Remember the prison video, the documentary we recently watched? Just like they can have these facilities with all of these prisoners locked up in cages with no sprinkler systems, inhumane conditions, antiquated facilities with not even the not even the compassion of a sprinkler system in there in case something goes wrong. And these guys are barbecued in their cages. This is equivalent to that, but in the court of law. This was a modern day lynching. Listen, have you heard about the hangings over in Delphi? This is a modern day hanging. Or lynching. And this was your guy. Okay, this was the black sheep. This was the what's the word? Scapegoat. This is your scapegoat. Richard Allen. Your scapegoat. Keeping of secrets. A community coming together, colluding together to bury the truth using a scapegoat in a modern day lynching. With all the enforcers running the YouTube streets to keep all of us silent about it. I mean, I know tonight was a lot to get through. Trust me, I did not want to read all that stuff. But I'm trying to paint a picture for you. Using the defense documents in black and white. It's in the court documents. Showing you in the documents where all of these pieces come together. And I don't even think the attorneys could clearly see it. But hindsight is always 20/20. So in retrospect, we can look at this and see the pieces of the puzzle come together. Nothing I said tonight came out of my imagination. And trust me, there were hundreds of more pages. There's just no time to do it all. As a matter of fact, we're going to very soon do an entire show on the Franks Memorandum, a redo, a look at it again. Okay, we're going to take another look at this Franks Memorandum in broad perspective with proper framing. Then we're going to do another show solely about the Wabash River search, which I think you'll find interesting. This was State's Exhibit 182. Before I end, I wanted to show this. You see, this was this was used to try to this was used to try to frame Rick Allen. You see, to make Rick Allen a lone wolf killer of this girl or these girls who abducted him off this bridge, chased him across the water, killed him where they lay, where the yellow pin is. But what I want you to look at here is look at that driveway underneath. Look at that road passing underneath. The plan was to drive that vehicle right under that bridge, walk those girls down that hill, or walk the one girl who was supposed to be down that hill, put her in that vehicle, get her the hell on out of Dodge. That was the plan. And the plan failed. So they ended up being chased. They ended up being chased. And we know the rest of the story. Anyway, I want to thank you guys very much for coming. God bless everyone. Heavy Metal Rehab. Oh Hey Christina, Miss K, Monday, Rebecca Ann, Fur Baby Daddy, Miss K. Oh, I said Miss K. Criminal Society, Goose's Gammy, Silenced, Rebecca Ann, Matt Payton, Dirty Diana, Mustang, Emily, Claremont, Becky, Court of Public Opinion, everyone who's here, Deb. Thank you to everyone who's here. MJ Lewis, shout out MJ Lewis, and Rebecca Ann. Thank you so much for the super chats. All right, y'all. Good night. We're out of here. God bless. God bless Libby and Abby. And pray for everybody, y'all. Hey, Goddess. Hey, Goddess Nicole Watt. Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you and good night, okay? God bless.